some way, depending on the religion you believe in that offers that, and you want to live just a happy life, you're probably faced with this kind of decision. Well, which kinds of a good life are the kind of good life that I want to have? So there's that. You also get one of the signs you might see over a secretary's desk is, let me not worry about the things I have no choice over, etc. They're funny signs. Don't worry about the things you can't control. Just do the things you can, etc. That's very Epicurean in a way. And remember, eating food that's very strange is not really one of the things he recommends. So, Epicurean. The next one is Epictetus. As I move in my weird logic, that I'm going from the cynic that has no attachments if possible, the Epicurus who loves life and wants to have all the benefits but none of the stresses. And then the next one would be the Stoics. And Epictetus, as an example, when we think about Epictetus and Stoicism, Stoicism is a word that comes from the porch. So the first Stoic was Zeno, and Zeno is famous for teaching on a painted porch, a stoa poikoile. So his preferred place was teaching underneath those big pillars on one of the buildings, wherever it was, right? And so it's called stoa, a Stoic. But what is their goal? Well, their goal is complete happiness. But along with that, you have the problem that we learned from Aristotle, and that is, in order for you to be a good person, you need to be raised by a good family. In order to have a good family, you need to have a good community. And in order to have a good community, you need a good state. So basically, you have to have order, you have to have a good government, you have to have defense against attacking states and so on. There's a whole lot of social obligations that an individual has to the state in order for them to lead the best possible life. Because you need the best kind of state in order to have the best possible life. So a Stoic believes that the highest morality really is doing what your duty is to the state. Because the state is the thing that enables you to have the good life. So if the state isn't succeeding, then you're not going to succeed. So, all kinds of interesting results come from this. The military, the philosophy or the morality associated with being in the military is usually thought of as a Stoic morality. So for example, when you're ordered to do something and you don't feel like doing it, well, but you have to do it. So you might not like doing a lot of the things you have to do, but somebody has to do it. And if you don't do it, then it's not going to get done, and you're going to lose. The state will lose, right? Perfect example of this are the Nazis during World War II. They did a lot of things that, as a result of their losing, of course, we put them on trial. And, in the Nuremberg trials, a lot of the Nazis killed a lot of people that, of course, we thought of as civilians. We thought that was immoral for them to kill those people. Not just the Holocaust, but lots of other examples, really. And the Nazis' example, or their excuse for why they behaved the way they did, was because they were following orders. They were being Stoic. I was ordered to do this, so I did it. And in fact, if I didn't do it, they would have killed me. I would have been shot, for insubordination or running away, things of that sort, right? General Patton, I remember if you ever saw the movie about Patton, one of the things he wanted to do for, one of the soldiers that had run away was he wanted to shoot him. I'm going to shoot him. He's grabbing his ivory-handled pistols. And, they said, no, you can't shoot him. Why not? He's running away. Shoot him. Well, we punished the Nazis who defended themselves by saying they were just following orders and did things that we, in our way of thinking, thought were illegal. Those are illegal orders. You're not allowed to follow illegal orders. The Nazis were Stoics. As far as their morality was concerned, following orders was the highest principle that they had. For us, and this is difficult if you're in our own military and you're out there and you're following orders, and then all of a sudden you get an order and you think, wait a minute, that's illegal. I shouldn't do that. Imagine the difficulty you have of questioning your orders, right? How's that going to work? And in fact, one of the famous examples in the United States military history is Lieutenant Calley. If you're familiar, anybody familiar with Lieutenant Calley? Not really. It's just quick.
You gonna bring up a movie?
Oh no. So Lieutenant Calley was an officer in the Vietnam War, and I believe this is how it worked. He received orders to basically destroy a village that was considered to be the source of a lot of Viet Cong attacks against U.S. operations in that area. So he went in and he literally destroyed men, women, children, burned the huts, etc. Notice that he was put on trial for that and ended up going to jail. Now the thing of course, is what about his superior officers? Did they give him those orders, and how come they weren't punished for the same thing? Well, everyone kind of agrees that he turned out to be the scapegoat. Let's just blame this one person for that. And did it happen in other villages? Probably. This one somehow ended up getting reported, and so the public wanted something done, and the something that got done was the officer did his job, was put in jail for it. But since then, he's avoided public attention. So there. Big problem for us.
Sort of Pandora's box.
Pardon?
It's Pandora's box, that topic.
Yeah, Pandora means all of the gifts. So if you open the box, you get the good and the bad. You don't just get the good. You can't. Whenever we talk about good and bad, we get both. You can't have good without bad. That's the fall, actually. So, Epicurus. And we have lots of works. We go, does my link work to Epictetus? I said Epicurus. Here's one. So these are an example. So yeah, the things that are in our power and not in our power. Actually, that's the one you get over the secretary's desk, isn't it? Stoic, I guess. So this is one of the questions I ask And the test is, which philosopher do you think would be a good guide for a life? And a lot of folks will pick Plato, a lot of folks will pick Socrates, Aristotle. But what I had in mind, of course, is what about all these other philosophers that give us these guides? And an interesting thing about these guides is that they're written not as like a history of their life, but as a list of things you should do in life. You know, this is the way you should live. Which is the best of all and supreme over all is the only thing which the gods have placed in our power. He does believe in the gods, but at the same time he thinks it's ridiculous to think the gods care about us. Basically, you know, this point of view is that the gods are these big creatures that are stomping around on the earth, and you're like ants trying to avoid getting stepped on. You know? So how do you behave so that you don't get stepped on by the gods? That's the main thing, you know, that you want to in your relationship to the gods. But if you call to Zeus, you know, what would Zeus do for you? You know, not much, right? Do these all seem to you small matters? I hope not. Be content with them and then pray to the gods. But now when it is in our power to look after one thing and to attach ourselves to it, we prefer to look after many things and to be bound to many things, to the body and to property and to brother and to friend and to child and to slave. Since then, we are bound to many things, we are depressed by them and dragged down, etc. So, one of the things that Stoics try to do is protect themselves from all the stress by retreating mentally into themselves. Perfect example of this is Viktor Frankl. When we think of Viktor Frankl, was, how many folks are familiar with Viktor Frankl? I know a few of you have read about him, but Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist that survived the Holocaust. He was one of the Jewish doctors that were captured and put into, I think, 3 of the different camps that he experienced. And he was a medical doctor, so they used him in like the medical clinic in the camp. So he lucked out basically until the very end when the camp was about ready to be destroyed, I think, by the incoming Russians. And so they told everyone to get on the truck, and he was too tired, too exhausted, so he just didn't. And he stayed where he was. And it turned out that everybody on the truck had been killed. They were going to kill him too. He ended up being rescued and released because he was still sitting there when the other forces came in and found him there. But how did he survive that? How did he survive all those years in the Holocaust, in those camps? And he explains it in his books, Man's Search for Meaning. And what he argues is that while the Nazis were doing things to him, beating him, starving him, making him overwork, the temperature's too cold, all the conditions terrible. He, as a psychiatrist, was watching and observing what other people were experiencing and observing what he was experiencing. So he internalized himself. So while they were beating him, he was somehow safe from what was happening to his body, because he had retreated mentally and he was watching what was going on. And what he noticed was that the Jewish people in the camp that gave up, they were dead within a week. But if you kept your internal soul protected, you were able to survive all kinds of experiences. I remember when I was crazy. I got my master's degree in philosophy, and then I joined the Army. So I'm in basic training with a master's degree in philosophy, and the drill sergeant standing in front of my face saying, "Recruit, you're lower than whale shit at the bottom of the ocean," and stuff like that. I had a hard time not laughing, but an awful lot of the other people, young kids, they were crying, "Oh my God, my mommy!" They were totally destroyed by these drill sergeants. And that was their job, actually. Was what they were trying to do was destroy who you were and then rebuild you as a member of the green team, right? And of course, by the time you graduated, you knew all the vocabulary, you knew how to dress, you knew how to salute, you knew all the stuff